big MGS fan here. You know how your boy rolls. And, in the case of MGS1 specifically, and from the perspective of a millennial gamer, right? It was a watershed release for the industry. Really, the game had a very ambitious fixation on narrative to the degree that Kojima wanted to kind of compete with Hollywood in terms of telling a story that's interesting, exciting, a Hollywood thriller, techno thriller, Tom Clancy-esque. And largely the game delivers on that promise, it really does deliver. The voice acting, dub is fantastic. The cinematography is really good despite the insanely rudimentary polygon, PS1 rendering. We're talking 1998 here. The game holds up even to this day. And, it's not hard to see how MGS1 kicked off this new period of introspection with the industry. And really it caused a bit of a schism between the more traditionally focused devs that wanted to keep gameplay king. Hideo Kojima is one of these guys, Gameplay is king. It's about being a fun experience, and then the narrative is kind of more of a flavor that's added afterwards. That's a very Japanese perspective on video games. Whereas in the West, ironically, Western developers, they saw what Kojima did and they said, we need to do this. This is the future. It seemed like the West had really embraced the idea that gaming shouldn't just be complementary to the movie industry. Video games need to be as similar to movies as possible. To the degree that really, the more similar games are to Hollywood, the more legitimate they become. And I saw this sentiment expressed frequently during this period of the early 2000s, not only from journalists at the time, but also a lot of gamers too. Our industry had come of age, and we were looking around going, where's our prestige industry? Where's our prestige enthusiast press? Where's our Oscar ceremony? Where's our Roger Ebert of gaming declaring our industry an essential component of the fabric of modern culture, Because you see a lot of these movie critics, they speak about Hollywood and film with these hushed tones of reverence, Hollywood loves to just jerk themselves off. It's like James Lipton inside the Actors Studio, that Jewish dude who used to be a pimp, I think, when he lived in France back in the 70s. But, no one cares about that. He's this high-minded movie critic, and the Hollywood schmaltzy strings swell as Brad Pitt saunters onto stage. And they both just jerk each other off about how great movies are, and it's just simply the highest form of culture, Hollywood, right? And, millennials, we grew up watching this crap on the Paramount channel or whatever, and we go, I wonder if there'll ever come a time when gaming will be treated with the same prestige as these movies. A lot of movies are also complete shit as well, by the way, and the art form, as the years go by, resembles pornography more than it does high art, in my opinion. And yet, Roger Ebert thinks that video games can never be art. So, despite the industry being in an amazing place at that time, innovating, a lot of developers at the top of their game, breaking records with titles, starting to actually encroach on Hollywood's market share in terms of profit, there was this strange self-consciousness, like an inferiority complex that was felt by both the producers and consumers of video games at the time. We were asking ourselves, when will it finally be okay to be a gamer, right? Our dues will be paid one day, when James Lipton Jr., aka Jeff Keighley, I guess, will jerk off with the same vigorous enthusiasm about our industry as Hollywood, the legacy movie industry. And I'm guilty of thinking like this too. As a millennial, I did dream of a day where, wow, the graphics are getting so good and the technology is becoming so advanced. Can you imagine one day when we'll be able to play a movie? Think of the greatest movie ever made. Imagine if it was interactive. Instead of passively sitting in the movie theater eating your goy corn, your pop slop, you're just eating away like a fucking cow grazing. Forget that. You're going to be this techno cyber bro hooked into your photorealistic video game and expanding your consciousness in this modern intellectual cultural pursuit, which is considered absolutely legitimate This will be the ultimate way for a story to be explored. We won't even need movies anymore because we will be better than movies. I guess that was the promise of the millennial dream of the movie game, right? When, in reality, things didn't quite turn out as utopian as we may have hoped. In fact, the modern movie game is kind of like the lowest common denominator of slop. It's the ultimate slop, the perfect slop. But how did we get here? How did we go from dreaming of supplanting the movie industry, transcending it, in this grandiose fashion, a David Cagean fantasy, to now we're simply like the movie industry's retarded little brother? At least the Western video game industry. Although Kojima these days, he is again, instead of transcending and leading the charge into a new future, he's using this incredible technology just to, eat the ass of like a Harvey Weinstein-esque Hollywood producer, as is customary. Like a cringy Westaboo parasite burrowing its way into a piece of raw maguro tuna, he flaps about, desperate in his lobbying for validation from the Judeo-Hollywood Western entertainment complex, an institution so woke it should be treated for AIDS. And yet, Hideo, in his aging agio-boomerism, is still willing to debase himself, to play the jester, the eunuch minstrel. In kabuki drag, he's willing to dance for these Epstein-adjacent Hollywood pedophiles, just for a crumb of validation. That is the power of legacy Hollywood. That is the prestige I mentioned earlier, that is something that still holds sway over older gentlemen like Hideo. He still looks at Hollywood with these rose-tinted glasses. And I know over the years there have been a lot of other creators and producers and forces in the industry that felt the same way. We don't really want to compete with Hollywood. We want to be assimilated into Hollywood. We want to be part of the same milieu. And just like a lot of other bad trends that began during this period, it started with the journos. It started with the hipsters who perhaps flunked out of their journalism degree and looking for a job, they started working at Eurogamer or something. And these guys suck at video games. For them, gameplay is not king. For them, gaming is like just an aesthetic thing, like a scarf you wear or a jacket or a pair of jeans. It's just ephemera. Just like a lot of their opinions and politics even, it's that everything is aesthetic to these people. I guess these are the true children of the millennium, For them, it's about criticizing art, not really about engaging with it or producing it. It's about criticizing it. So, there became suddenly this attitude of kind of pomposity and a genuine disdain for traditional games. And Eurogamer is especially guilty of this. A lot of these journos, they would review a Japanese game with amazing gameplay, but then they would criticize it for the story not being good enough, Oh, the story's too simple. The story's too cliched. So it only gets 7 out of 10 or something. And you're going, what kind of criteria are we using here to judge a video game's value based on just the story? It doesn't make sense historically for the industry, and yet you saw this more and more during the 2000s. This idea that a game should be judged primarily on its story, that's the core of what a game is, it's this narrative. And the gameplay is the complementary element. This was a huge shakeup. And, in Japan, it was largely not a thing. But in the West, there was this intellectualization of gaming happening through the journos, where you started to see shades of what would eventually become the cause for Gamergate, where the journalists crazed with power declared the entirety of the legacy video game audience as dead, unwanted, bigoted, completely irrelevant. And this happened largely in the 2010s, but leading up to that period, you saw the industry changing. You saw games like Uncharted and Uncharted 2 being hailed, especially 2, being hailed as these masterpieces, when in reality, those games are not particularly deep gameplay-wise, and in fact, they're really not worth more than like one blast through. And does anybody really give a shit? When's the last time you were tempted to replay Uncharted, And Last of Us is another one of these games, right? But even in the indie scene, you had games like Dear Esther being championed as, oh, this is the true artistry of gaming. Walking simulators with a vaguely political, navel-gazing narrative that's just boring. According to Eurogamer and their ilk, it's those kind of experiences that are the most valuable in the industry. It's that gameplay doesn't matter. Gameplay is just an inconvenience you have to get through so that you can experience the story, right? So really, the less gameplay, the better. In fact, if you remove gameplay completely, then that's the real sweet spot. You know, a game like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, another Chinese room joint, where, you know, the player character walks at such a slow pace, more of a strolling simulator, really. There's no sprint button, and you're just walking through an old British town. Very picturesque, as you listen to these pseudo audio logs of a black woman complaining that everyone's racist to her. Like, that is truly the future of gaming, and the journos are gushing. And, you know, gamers are sitting here listening to this going, you know, this is absurd. You know, I want to play a game that's fun. Well, you know, as the great Neil Druckmann once said, here at Naughty Dog, we don't use the word fun. It's not about fun, okay? Retard. It's not about fun. Games aren't supposed to be challenging. Games aren't supposed to be games, okay, you fucking pleb? Games are movies. Except not as good, okay? And here we are now, at the end of this millennial inquiry into the legitimacy of gaming in the public eye, right? We're accepted. We're part of modern culture. There's just one problem. It's that, you know, pornography has been legitimized in the modern culture. So is prostitution. Do you really want to be legitimized by this culture? Well, you know, all that's happened really is that gaming now has entered its most degenerate form, really. Where you have two flavors in the West. You have the Kafka Trap mind sink, the time waster, the endless online grind game that seeks just to sap away your human essence, your energy, your potential for agency in the real world, just to drain you of all ambition as a man, to channel your masculine urge to compete or to solve a problem, to simply just drain you forever. That's one type of modern game. And the other type is the LGBTQ, neo-Marxoid, neoliberal propaganda disguised as a movie, disguised as a video game. Truly a dire situation, you know, and I haven't played a Western game in quite a while. I attempted to play Starfield. I've already talked about how disappointing Starfield is, but, you know, honestly, Starfield is just pissing me off at this point. I hate that it exists. I just hate that that is the best that we can do in the West. That, like, Starfield is like the best that we can do, because at least there's a game, right? Whereas a lot of Zoomers, they're going to just be playing Spider-Man 2, you know, for the PS5 or whatever. Black Spider-Man, gay Spider-Man, Spider-Man's he fucking gay. Kratos is like a soy-facing bear who is like the most updated dad of the year, you know, he's very progressive, he's cool. If his son wants to transition, he's cool with it. Game of the year, and in God of War 3, here's a little preview, there's a leak. I'm leaking some of the story here, but you know what? Spoiler alert, Kratos is gay. And we're gonna celebrate it. Celebrate it or be banished from your fucking community. Like, okay, no thank you, no thank you. I'll stick with the autistic Japanese devs that simply will not give up the ghost, you know? I mean, I played Armored Core 6 last year. Fucking amazing game. Now that's how you do it. Gameplay is king, the story is cool, complimentary, and actually quite deep. The lore is on point, the graphics fucking rule, the game fucking rules. Zoom bros, can you even imagine a time when the video game industry en masse shared that philosophy, right? Gameplay is king. It used to be a thing, right? That used to be how it was. Before we as an industry were cannibalized by the perspectives and the philosophies of legacy entertainment, right? And the hipster millennials that created this culture of fetishism surrounding these industries, you know? As if the CIA-sponsored Project Mockingbird cancer of the 70s film industry, or the 80s film industry, or the 90s for that matter, are in any way comparable to the unchained creativity of classic gaming. It's not the same at all. And we were seduced as an industry. We heard the siren song of James Lipton, He played his Pied Piper's little Shabos ocarina as he skipped down that primrose path, saying, "Come on, boys. Things will be better when we're more like Hollywood." When Guardian journalists write positive reviews about games, and you see celebrities at video game premieres, and the Game Awards are a thing, and the previously mentioned Jeff Keighley is sauntering around with like a martini, and Hideo Kojima is giving him a blowjob in like the fucking glory hole in the background, and Oscar winner Timothée Chalamet just like spazzing out in the corner after overdosing on heroin. That's the industry. The industry is now just Hollywood, but somehow with less integrity. And I think for Kojima, I think the next step is crucial. I think if he wants to push his Western cultural mindshare to the next level, if he wants to become even more relevant as a mover and a shaker in Hollywood circles, I think you know what he's got to do, and I think I know. Snip, snip, Hideo. The dick's gotta go.